They called it the Ark of Dawn, humanity's last colony beyond Earth. A fragile outpost orbiting a dying world, kept alive by a signal, a single transmission from home. But one day, the signal stopped. No static, no voice. Just silence. The systems began to fail, and fear spread through the corridors like fire. I was there when the last message came through, a voice whispering, "We're not alone. This is the last broadcast," the moment hope died, and something else answered.
The faint crackle of static filled the air, a fragile thread connecting us to a world that had become increasingly distant, both in space and in time. I sat rigidly in front of the console, eyes fixed on the wavering lines of the signal as if willing it to hold steady. Around me, the hum of machines was the only companion to the tension that gripped the room. Sophia Kim, our communications technician, sat nearby, her fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to respond, to decode, to salvage anything from the wavering stream of data. "It's coming through," she whispered, voice barely above the hiss of the static. "It's weak, but it's still there." The broadcast was Earth's last. A faint, fragmented message punctuated by bursts of interference, a voice breaking through the cosmic silence, just long enough to remind us that home still existed. And then it didn't. The signal tore itself apart. The voice cut off mid-sentence, leaving only an oppressive silence that filled the room with a heavy, suffocating weight. I swallowed hard, feeling the breath catch in my throat. "That's it," I said quietly, more to myself than anyone else. "That's the last we'll hear." The colony had been on the edge of this moment for months, watching and waiting as Earth's transmissions grew fainter, more sporadic. Now the silence was absolute. It was a void that seemed to reach through the walls of the station and settle deep inside each of us, a reminder that we were utterly alone. I rose and walked to the viewport, the cold glass framing the barren landscape outside. Jagged rocks and dust stretched as far as the eye could see beneath a pale, indifferent sky. No birds sang here, no wind whispered through leaves, only the sound of our own breathing and the distant, mechanical heartbeat of the colony's life support systems. This was home now, a place cut off, forgotten. I could feel the eyes of the others on me as I turned back from the window. In the main hall, a small group had gathered, faces etched with anxiety and disbelief. Some whispered prayers, others exchanged grim looks, but all of us shared the same unspoken fear. What if we had been abandoned? "We have to keep going," I told them, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. "We don't know what happened, but we can't give up." Still, the silence pressed down, an invisible weight that threatened to crush our spirits. That night, in the solitude of my quarters, I reached for the recorder and began to speak, capturing my thoughts, my fears, my hope. The audio log was the only way I could hold on to a sense of connection, not just to Earth, but to myself. "Day one of silence," I said, the microphone catching the slight tremor in my voice. "The last broadcast is gone. We don't know why, and we don't know what comes next, but we are still here. And as long as we are, there is hope." Outside, the colony settled into an uneasy quiet, the first night of many where the absence of Earth's voice was louder than any sound. It was the beginning of a journey none of us wanted, but all of us had to face, a journey into isolation, survival, and the uncertain future that awaited us beyond the fading signals. The last broadcast was gone, but our story was just beginning. The humming console in front of me was the only sound breaking the pervasive quiet of my quarters. I sat with the headset snug over my ears, fingers poised above the controls. The red record light blinked steadily, a small beacon in the dim. I took a breath and began my log, voice calm but layered with the weight of what I carried inside me. Audio log, day 47 since the final signal. The silence from Earth has stretched into a void that threatens to swallow us whole. Each day, the absence of contact chisels away at our resolve. I find myself returning to memories of home, of family, of a life that feels more distant than the stars we gaze upon. My parents' faces, their laughter, the warmth of an embrace, these are now echoes, fragile threads that I clutch tightly in the face of this growing emptiness. The act of speaking, of recording these thoughts, was my tether. It gave form to the formless dread, a way to confront the silence that loomed like an unseen specter. I remembered why I had become a communications officer, not just to decode signals and manage transmissions, but to keep our connections alive, to bridge the vast gulf between worlds. Now, with no signal, I was left to bridge the chasm within myself and among us. Outside my quarters, the colony stirred. The communal hall was a place where we sought refuge from isolation, a fragile cocoon against the creeping despair. Maya Singh moved among the colonists, her warm smile a balm to frayed nerves. She encouraged conversation, shared stories of Earth's festivals and traditions, and organized small gatherings to remind us that we were more than just survivors, we were a community. I joined one such gathering reluctantly, the chatter and laughter a stark contrast to the silence we endured. Yet beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. Conversations often circled back to the same questions. Was Earth truly silent? Had we been abandoned? Did anyone remember us anymore? Maya's presence was a steadying force. She reminded us that hope, however fragile, was a choice we had to make daily. Her optimism was neither naive nor hollow. It was a resilience born from compassion and shared hardship. Watching her, I understood the importance of her role, not just a medic, but the emotional anchor that many of us desperately needed. But in quieter moments, away from the communal spaces and smiling faces, the solitude returned. I wandered the corridors, the hum of life support systems and machinery our only companions. The absence of incoming transmissions was a void that pressed against my chest. It was as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting to see if we would endure or succumb. I often found myself staring at the communication array. Its silent dishes pointed toward a distant Earth that no longer answered. The technology that once linked us was now a monument to loss. I wondered what messages might have been sent in those final moments, pleas for help, words of farewell, or silent screams swallowed by the void. At night, when the colony settled into uneasy rest, I returned to my logs. I spoke of what I saw, felt, and feared. I told stories of our past and whispered hopes for our future. These recordings were more than a chronicle. They were a lifeline. We are adrift, I confessed in one log, but not yet lost. The silence is our adversary, but it cannot extinguish the spark within us. We must hold on to that light, no matter how faint. The chapter closed with a fragile promise. Despite the shadows gathering around us, we would not surrender. Our voices, recorded and remembered, would become the echoes that sustained us through the dark. And as I ended the recording, the red light blinked on, steady and unwavering, our last broadcast to the silence. The metallic clang of the supply bay door echoed down the sterile corridors as Liam Ortega stepped inside, clipboard in hand. The cold light flickered overhead, casting long shadows over rows of carefully stacked crates. Each container was a lifeline, and as Liam had come to realize, a fragile one at that. Today marked the beginning of the new reality rationing. The colony's finite resources, once a buffer against the unknown, were now being measured with surgical precision. Liam's footsteps reverberated against the metal floor as he moved systematically between the stacks, cross-referencing data on his clipboard with the physical inventory before him. His face, usually calm and pragmatic, was tight with concern. The numbers were grim. Supplies were dwindling faster than expected, and with no word from Earth, the possibility of resupply was slipping further into the realm of fantasy. Outside the supply bay, murmurs of unease rippled through the corridors. Colonists whispered in hushed tones, their faces drawn and eyes flickering with worry. For many, the idea of rationing was not just a logistical challenge, it was a stark reminder of their isolation. The comfort of abundance had vanished, replaced by the cold arithmetic of survival. Elara Quinn moved through the colony's common area, her sharp eyes catching every flicker of tension. She paused near a group of colonists clustered in quiet conversation, their voices low and laden with uncertainty. The room was dimly lit, the soft hum of the life support systems the only consistent sound amid the restless shifting of feet. Beside her, Maya Singh offered a warm smile, her presence a steadying force. "We need to keep the community together," Maya said softly, her voice carrying the kind of nurturing optimism that had bolstered many through darker days. "These meetings will help us stay connected, remind us why we're here." Elara nodded, her thoughts a whirl of logistical challenges and emotional currents. She was a communications officer by training, but this was no simple broadcast. It was a battle against creeping despair. To keep the colony's spirit alive, she and Maya began organizing regular gatherings, forums where people could voice fears, share stories, and find strength in shared purpose. The first meeting was held in the central hall, a converted space with metal benches arranged in a semicircle. Colonists filed in quietly, faces etched with worry yet eager for any semblance of normalcy. Elara stood before them, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "We were facing limitations we never expected. Supplies will be rationed from now on. It's not easy, but it's necessary. We must work together to make it through." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others exchanging worried glances. Maya stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll find ways to support each other. No one will face this alone." Despite their resolve, the strain was palpable. Conversations spilled over into small clusters, where voices dropped to anxious whispers. The rationing protocols meant less food, less energy, less of everything that once made life comfortable. It forced colonists to confront the stark reality of their severed connection to Earth. Back in her quarters, Elara sat before a small console and activated her audio recorder. The soft red light blinked steadily as she began her log. "Day 73 since the last contact," she murmured, her voice steady but carrying the weight of solitude. "Rationing begins today. Liam reports supplies will last, but only just. The colony's morale is fraying at the edges. I feel it too, the silence pressing in, heavier each day." She paused, the hum of the life support system filling the quiet room. "But we endure. We have to. Not all moments were so controlled." Later, in the narrow hallways, tensions flared in brief but sharp confrontations. One colonist, voice raised in frustration, confronted Liam over the strict limits on food portions. "We can't survive like this," the colonist argued, eyes blazing with desperation. "We need more." Liam's response was calm but unyielding. "If we exceed limits, we jeopardize everyone. We have to be realistic." The argument ended as quickly as it began, the hallway falling back into uneasy silence. These flashpoints became frequent reminders of the delicate balance between order and chaos. Elara watched all of this unfold, the rationing, the meetings, the tension, and felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. The colony was a fragile ecosystem, and every decision rippled through the community. Yet amid the uncertainty, she clung to a quiet hope. The very act of coming together, of confronting hardship openly, was a testament to their resilience. Even as the days grew darker and the silence from Earth stretched on, the colony found ways to endure. Through rationing, through shared struggles and small acts of kindness, they began to forge a new identity, not as forgotten outcasts, but as survivors. As Elara finished her audio log that night, she spoke with a resolve that surprised even her. "We ration the future, yes, but we also ration hope. And hope is what keeps us alive." The chapter closed with the colony settling into a tentative rhythm, the harsh reality of scarcity balanced by the stubborn human will to survive. Outside, the stars blinked cold and distant, silent witnesses to the fragile lives below. The silence from Earth was unbroken, but within the colony, a new kind of communication was taking root, one of shared endurance and quiet determination. And for Elara, that was enough to face the uncertain days ahead. The air in the colony's common room was thick with a tension that had been steadily building for days. Elara found herself pausing outside the heavy door, the faint murmur of voices seeping through the seams. She couldn't help but listen. The voices were low, guarded, but the words carried an unmistakable edge of frustration and fear. "We can't keep pretending the supplies will last," one voice whispered, sharp and urgent. "Someone has to make the hard calls." "And what?" "Hand over control to someone who might gamble everything on hope," another retorted, skepticism dripping from each syllable. Elara's heart tightened. The colony, once bound by collective resolve, now frayed at the edges. She knew these fractures had been creeping beneath the surface, but hearing them laid bare was a jarring blow. Pushing open the door, she stepped inside. The common room was dimly lit, the faint glow of overhead panels casting long shadows. A handful of colonists stood clustered near the supply manifests pinned to the wall, their faces etched with worry. Elara Quinn greeted her with a tentative smile, her eyes reflecting the unease that clung to all of them. "We were just discussing the ration adjustments." "And the leadership," added Liam, his arms crossed defensively. "Some think we need a different approach, someone less optimistic." Elara swallowed hard, the sting of their doubt piercing deeper than any physical wound. "We're all trying to survive," she said quietly. "Optimism isn't a luxury, it's a necessity." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the engineering bay. Elara exchanged a knowing look with Maya before moving toward the source of the discord. Inside the engineering bay, Jonas Vega stood before a small group of colonists, his face grave beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. His glasses caught the gleam of the monitors, but his eyes were fixed on Elara as she entered. "Elara," he began, his voice steady but edged with concern, "your plan to send a team out to salvage equipment is reckless. We don't know what dangers await, and the risks could cost us dearly." Elara squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with quiet resolve. "If we don't act, the life support systems will fail. We have no choice." Jonas shook his head. Risking lives on a hunch isn't leadership, it's desperation. The tension between them was palpable, a clash of pragmatism and hope. Around them, colonists shifted uncomfortably, caught between fear and the need to believe. Later that night, Elara retreated to her quarters. The silence was oppressive, wrapping around her like a shroud. She sat before her console, the soft glow illuminating her tired features as she began recording an audio log. "Day 92, she spoke softly, voice thick with exhaustion. "The colony's fractures deepen. Doubt shadows every conversation. I feel it too, the gnawing fear beneath my resolve. But I can't let it consume me. We have to hold on, for them, for all of us." Her words hung in the still air, a fragile thread of hope woven into the fabric of uncertainty. The next day, Maya Singh worked tirelessly to bridge the growing divides. She organized a small gathering in the communal area, inviting colonists to share stories, fears, and small comforts. Her warm smile and gentle presence were a balm against the encroaching despair. As colonists gathered, the room filled with soft murmurs, the clinking of cups, and tentative laughter. It was a fragile moment of connection, a brief respite from the storm, yet beneath the surface, the fractures remained. Whispered doubts, heated debates, and sleepless nights marked the colony's slow unraveling. Elara knew the path ahead would be treacherous. To survive, they would need to confront not only the unforgiving environment beyond their walls, but also the silent threat growing within the fracturing of their fragile humanity. The chapter closed on Elara's gaze, fixed on the horizon beyond the settlement, the weight of leadership heavy on her shoulders. The silence from Earth was not just a void outside, but a growing chasm inside each of them. The heavy silence pressed down on the colony like an invisible fog, settling over every corridor and living quarter, seeping into the bones of the settlers. Elara Quinn sat alone in her dimly lit quarters, the faint hum of life support systems the only sound to break the oppressive stillness. The emergency lights cast a muted red glow, shadows stretching long and wavering as she adjusted the microphone for her audio log. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed record, the act itself a fragile tether to sanity in the vast loneliness. Day 157, she began, her voice low, raw with fatigue. The silence from Earth persists. No transmissions, no signals, just this endless void. Sometimes I wonder if anyone is out there listening anymore, or if we've simply been forgotten. Her eyes, sharp and alert by nature, now betrayed a flicker of vulnerability that she rarely showed. The burden of being the colony's communications officer now doubled as the weight of hope and despair upon her shoulders. She paused, swallowing hard before continuing. I can feel it, the silence. It's not just the absence of sound, it's a presence. A void that fills the spaces between us, gnawing at the edges of our minds. The audio log was as much a confession as a record, a glimpse into the private battles she fought against the creeping isolation. When she finished, she exhaled slowly, the act of speaking aloud a small victory. Yet the silence that followed was a stark reminder of their predicament. Outside her quarters, the colony stirred with muted activity. Maya Singh, the community coordinator and medic, moved through the common areas like a steady pulse of warmth. Her curly hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her approachable smile was a rare beacon in the gloom. Tonight, she had organized a small gathering in the communal hall, an attempt to stitch the fraying edges of morale back together. The common area was modest but functional, tables pushed aside to make room for a circle of chairs. Colonists gathered, faces etched with exhaustion and worry, but as Maya began to speak, a tentative energy sparked. She led them in storytelling, encouraging each to share memories from Earth or hopes for the future. Laughter, hesitant at first, rippled through the group, mingling with the soft hum of the colony's life systems. For a moment, the silence was broken not by the distant, unreachable voice of Earth, but by the fragile human connection forged in this alien outpost. Elara, watching from the doorway, felt a stirring of something she hadn't felt in weeks, a flicker of hope. Yet it was quickly tempered by the reality she knew all too well. The colony's survival depended not just on supplies or technology, but on their ability to endure the psychological weight of abandonment. Later, she stood by a reinforced window, looking out over the barren expanse of the alien landscape. The night sky was a deep, unyielding black, starless and silent. The terrain stretched endlessly, a desolate wasteland of jagged rocks and shifting dust. The silence pressed against the glass, heavy and suffocating, as if it sought to swallow them whole. Her breath fogged the window as she leaned closer, searching for some sign, anything that their isolation was not absolute. But there was only the void. Her reflection stared back, eyes wary but resolute. The colony was fragile, and so was she. The next morning brought no relief. At the daily supply meeting, the tension was palpable. The colony's dwindling resources were laid bare, and though Liam Ortega maintained strict inventory reports, murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd. Some colonists questioned the leadership's decisions, their voices low but edged with frustration and fear. Elara stepped forward, her voice steady but carrying the weight of urgency. We must remain united. Every ration, every choice is critical to our survival. We cannot let fear fracture us. Yet beneath her words, she felt the fragility of their bonds. The psychological toll of the silence had begun to manifest not just in whispered doubts, but in restless nights, nightmares, and growing paranoia. The colony was at a crossroads, and the path forward was obscured by uncertainty. That night, Elara recorded another audio log, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and determination. We live in silence, but we cannot let it define us. We hold on to each other, and to the hope that still flickers somewhere beyond this void. For now, that must be enough. As she ended the recording, the colony settled into uneasy sleep, the silence outside unbroken but no longer absolute. Within their hearts, a quiet defiance took root, a promise to endure, even when forgotten. And somewhere in the darkness, the faintest glimmer of hope began to stir. End of. The communications bay was dimly lit, the glow of consoles casting long shadows across scattered equipment and tangled cables. Sophia Kim sat hunched over a bank of monitors, her fingers moving deftly over the controls as static hissed softly in the background. The usual hum of the colony's systems was a distant murmur here, replaced by the sharp crackle of interference that had become all too familiar. For weeks, the silence from Earth had settled like a heavy fog, pressing down on every corner of the colony. But tonight, something was different. Sophia's eyes narrowed as a faint blip flickered across the main screen. It was irregular, almost imperceptible beneath the static, but unmistakably there. She adjusted the frequency, her breath catching as the signal persisted, a weak, stuttering pulse that defied the oppressive quiet. "Elara," Sophia called softly, glancing toward the door. "You need to see this." Elara Quinn stepped inside, her sharp eyes immediately drawn to the screen. The colony's communications officer had long since become a figure of pragmatic hope. Her lean frame tense with the weight of unspoken fears and unyielding determination. She leaned close, the low hum of the equipment mingling with the rapid beat of her heart. "Is that a signal?" Elara whispered, hardly daring to believe. Sophia nodded, her fingers flying across the console to isolate the pulse. "It's faint, irregular, but it's definitely not random noise. There's some kind of pattern." They worked through the night, painstakingly filtering and amplifying the signal. Each fragment teased out from the static was a fragile thread connecting them to a home that seemed increasingly distant and unreachable. The colony's last beacon, now flickering uncertainly in the void. Days passed with Sophia and Elara collaborating closely, decoding bursts of data that hinted at Earth's dire situation, but also suggested that some efforts to communicate still endured. The colony's communal spaces, once heavy with despair, began to fill with murmurs of cautious optimism. People gathered around crude speakers, listening to the crackling transmissions that stitched together fragments of messages, voices warped and distorted but undeniably human. "It's not much," Elara admitted during one of the tense meetings, "but it's something. It means Earth hasn't forgotten us entirely." Maya Singh's warm smile offered a rare light in those moments, her presence nurturing the fragile bonds that kept the colony from fracturing. Yet beneath the surface, skepticism festered. Juta Jonas Vega voiced his concerns quietly but firmly. Was this signal a sign of hope or a cruel trick of interference? Elara found herself caught between the urge to rally the colony around this spark of hope and the gnawing fear that it might be a mirage. In the quiet of her quarters, she replayed the transmissions alone, whispering promises into the silence. The weight of isolation pressed against the thin walls, but in those fleeting moments, the silence seemed less like an enemy and more like a presence to be reckoned with, a vast space filled with possibility. The discovery of the faint signals did not erase the colony's fears, nor did it solve their dwindling resources or mounting tensions. But it breathed life into their resolve, reminding them that even in the deepest silence, a whisper of connection could survive. And for Elara, that whisper was enough to keep fighting, to keep listening, and to hope. As the static faded into the background, the colony embraced a new, fragile rhythm, one marked by uncertainty, but also by a stubborn refusal to surrender to the void. Their future remained unwritten, a delicate thread suspended between silence and sound, loneliness and community, despair and hope. And in that space, Elara found her purpose renewed. Outside, the alien sky stretched vast and indifferent, but inside the colony's heart, a faint signal pulsed, a last broadcast, fragile and unyielding, echoing into the unknown. The hum of the colony's life support systems filled the background as the meeting hall grew thick with tension. Elara stood at one side of the room, her eyes locked on Juta Jonas Vega across the space. The dim lighting cast long shadows, mirroring the unease that had settled in the hearts of the colonists. Tonight's gathering was supposed to be a routine update, but quickly spiraled into a crucible where hope and skepticism clashed. Sophia Kim had just presented her findings, faint, irregular signals that might be remnants of Earth's broadcasts. The room had been charged with a tentative optimism as the audio samples played crackling static punctuated by fleeting patterns that hinted at intentionality. But as the last echo faded, the weight of uncertainty pressed down. Jonas stepped forward, his graying hair catching the dull light. These signals, he began, voice calm but firm, could easily be random noise, interference from cosmic radiation, equipment glitches, or even atmospheric anomalies. To build our survival strategy on such fragile evidence is reckless. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elara felt a pang of conflict. She believed in the flicker of hope Sophia had uncovered, but Jonas's pragmatism was not unfounded. Years of scientific rigor had honed his caution. Jonas, Elara replied steadily, it's not about abandoning caution. It's about not giving up on the possibility that Earth is still out there, still trying to reach us. This colony was built on hope as much as on science. Jonas shook his head, adjusting his glasses. Hope will not fix failing life support systems or dwindling food supplies. We need hard data, reliable plans. If we chase ghosts in the signal, we risk neglecting the real work. The debate deepened, fracturing the colony's fragile cohesion. Some colonists sided with Elara's vision, clinging to the slender thread of connection with their distant home. Others rallied behind Jonas's call for clear-eyed survivalism. The tension was palpable, threatening to unravel the delicate trust that held them together. Meanwhile, Sophia retreated to the communications room, a cramped chamber humming with outdated consoles and flickering screens. She replayed the signals, her fingers trembling slightly as she isolated a faint pattern buried beneath the static. Each fragment was a whisper from a vanished world, a puzzle piece in the vast silence. But doubt gnawed at her resolve. Was she hearing meaning where there was only noise? Outside, Maya Singh moved quietly through the colony's corridors. Her warm smile and steady presence soothed anxious colonists whispering about the growing divisions. She organized small gatherings, encouraging open dialogue and emotional support. Her role as a caregiver extended beyond physical wounds. She tended the fraying bonds of community spirit. Late into the night, Elara sat alone in her quarters, the muted glow of the control panel casting soft light on her face. She activated her recorder, her voice low but steady. Day 187, she began, the silence from Earth grows heavier each day, yet a faint signal pulses through the static. It's a fragile thread, but it's enough to keep us tethered to hope. Still, I wonder, are we clinging to a ghost? Will hope blind us to the harsh truths we face? Or is hope the only thing that will carry us through the darkness? Her words hung in the quiet room, a poignant reflection of the colony's precarious balance. As dawn approached, the colony woke to a new day shadowed by uncertainty. The argument over the signals was far from settled, and the rift between hope and pragmatism threatened to widen. Elara knew that to survive, they would need more than just technical skill or blind faith. They would need to find a way to walk the narrow line between dreams and reality, lest the shadows of doubt consume them all. The storage bay was quiet except for the soft hum of the colony's life support systems, a low constant beneath the scattered echoes of footsteps and shifting crates. Liam Ortega's boots thudded softly against the cold metal floor as he followed the catalog list on his tablet, ticking off inventory with meticulous precision. He had been at this for hours, cross-referencing shipments and supplies, trying to reconcile the dwindling resources with the official records. Something hadn't added up for weeks now. The numbers were off, but the log showed no errors. His eyes caught a faint outline on the far wall of the Bayer section that didn't match the rest of the shelving units. Curious, Liam stepped closer and ran his fingers along the seam of a false panel cleverly disguised to blend into the bulkhead. The edge gave way slightly under his touch. Heart quickening, he pulled at the panel until it shifted open, revealing a narrow compartment filled with crates stamped with the colony's insignia, but dated months earlier than the last inventory update. The stale scent of sealed supplies, dried rations, medical kits, spare parts rose up in the stale air. Liam's breath caught. This was a cache no one had mentioned. No one but whoever had hidden it here. He lifted a crate, its weight surprisingly light for the contents. The label indicated preserved nutrient bars and filtration devices, critical items that the colony was now rationing to near desperation. Liam's mind raced. This discovery could buy the colony weeks, maybe months. But why had it been kept secret? And by whom? He almost didn't hear the footsteps behind him until Elara Quinn's sharp voice broke the silence. "Liam, what have you found?" He turned to see her lean against the doorway, eyes sharp and alert despite the exhaustion etched into her face. The flickering overhead lights cast shadows that seemed to deepen the lines of worry on her face. "Something," Liam said carefully, stepping aside to reveal the catch. Lots of them, hidden here, undocumented. Elara's gaze swept over the crates, a mixture of relief and suspicion flickering across her features. Why wasn't this reported? Why hide it? Before Liam could answer, Maya Singh approached, her presence quietly steady amid the growing tension. "This could be the break we needed," she said softly. "But we need to be careful. If trust breaks down now, this relief might not last." Elara nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll call a meeting. Everyone needs to know. Transparency is critical. We can't afford fractures." Word spread quickly through the colony. In the cramped meeting room, faces lit by harsh fluorescence turned toward Elara as she stood before them. "We've found supplies," she announced. "Enough to ease our rationing for a time. But this raises questions about leadership and honesty. I promise you we will get to the bottom of this." The room murmured, a wave of relief rippling through, but underneath was an undercurrent of doubt. Whispers sparked like static electricity. How many other secrets lay buried? Later, near the supply bay, Jonas Vega cornered Liam. His voice was low but intense. "This isn't just about supplies, Liam. This secret could tear us apart. Who authorized hiding it? We need answers, now." Liam met his gaze steadily. "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." The shadows of the bay seemed to lean in as their conversation ended, the weight of the hidden cache pressing down on both men. As night fell over the colony, Elara sat alone in her quarters, recording an audio log. Her voice was steady but carried the wariness of leadership fraught with uncertainty. "Today, we found hope hidden in silence. But hope alone won't save us. We must confront the darkness within ourselves as much as the void without. Trust is fragile, and now more than ever, it must be our foundation." Outside, the colony settled into uneasy rest, the hidden cache a beacon of light flickering against the encroaching shadows of doubt and isolation. The silence from Earth remained unbroken and oppressive, but within the colony a new, complicated chapter had begun, one that would test not only their survival, but the very bonds that held them together. The discovery had bought them time, but the questions it raised threatened to unravel the delicate fabric of their community. Elara knew the days ahead would demand more than resilience. They would require courage, honesty, and an unyielding commitment to each other. The silence was no longer just an external enemy. It had seeped into their hearts, and only by facing the fractures within could they hope to endure. As the first light of the colony's artificial dawn crept through the window, Elara's thoughts lingered on the hidden cache, a symbol of both salvation and suspicion. She pressed the record button again, her voice barely above a whisper. "We survive not because we are unbroken, but because we choose to be whole, even when the world forgets us." The chapter closed on that fragile hope, a pause before the inevitable storms to come. The communal hall was suffused with an oppressive heat, not from any artificial source, but from the collective frustration that seemed to radiate from every face gathered within its cramped walls. The air was thick, carrying the sharp scent of recycled oxygen and the faint metallic tang of the colony's ventilation system. Around the long ration table, groups of colonists huddled close, voices rising and falling in waves of anxious debate. Elara Quinn stood near the center, her posture steady but her eyes flickering with the weight of responsibility. She knew that this meeting was more than a routine discussion. It was a tipping point. Liam Ortega stood firm behind the ration table, clutching his clipboard as if it were a shield against the growing storm. His face was taut, the lines worn deeper by sleepless nights, and the constant pressure of managing supplies that were rapidly dwindling. "We must be realistic," he said, his voice steady but edged with exhaustion. "The supplies we have must last. There's no guarantee of resupply." A murmur rippled through the crowd, quickly rising to a chorus of voices. "Realistic," one man shouted. "Realistic means you control everything and decide who gets what!" Another woman stepped forward, her voice sharp with anger. "We deserve transparency, Liam. We need to know what's really left and how decisions are made. We can't survive on secrets and silent rationing." Elara moved between the parties, raising her hands in a gesture meant to calm but barely containing her own rising tension. "Please," she said firmly, "we all want the same thing to survive. We need to work together, not tear each other apart." But beneath her words, doubt gnawed. The colony was fraying at the edges. The silence from Earth was no longer just an absence of signal, but a vacuum pulling at the community's cohesion. She glanced toward Maya Singh, who was quietly moving through the crowd, her warm presence a balm to the frayed nerves of their neighbors. Maya's gentle voice rose above the din, coaxing arguments into softer tones. She knelt beside a young colonist trembling with fear, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We reach stronger together," she whispered. "We have to be." Yet even Maya's comforting words could not fully stem the tide of unrest. A group of colonists, their faces hardened by hunger and fear, clustered in the shadows, exchanging heated whispers that spoke of rebellion and demands for a new leadership structure, one that would give them more control over the colony's fate. Juta Jonas Vega, standing apart with his ever-present tablet, observed the fracturing with a furrowed brow. He approached Elara quietly, his voice low but urgent. "If this continues, the colony could break apart before the supplies run out. We need a plan that addresses both the physical and psychological crises." Elara nodded, the weight of leadership pressing down like the heavy silence outside the walls. After the meeting broke up in uneasy disarray, she retreated to her quarters. The small room was stark, illuminated by the pale glow of instruments and the flickering light from her console. She activated her recording device, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. Day 237. She began, "The fractures we feared are no longer beneath the surface. They are visible, raw, and threatening to widen into chasms. Trust is eroding faster than our supplies. We stand at a crossroads not just for survival, but for the soul of this colony. I must find a way to hold us together, or we will perish not from lack of resources, but from the silence that divides us." She paused, listening to the distant hum of life support, the quiet that had become a constant companion since Earth's last broadcast ended. The silence felt alive, an invisible presence that both haunted and spurred her on. The days that followed saw Elara working tirelessly to mediate between factions, convening smaller meetings to air grievances and propose solutions. She urged transparency, advocating for a shared inventory system, and rotating leadership roles to distribute responsibility and foster trust. Liam, though resistant at first, gradually conceded to her proposals, recognizing the peril of unilateral control. Meanwhile, Maya organized communal activities, shared meals, storytelling sessions, and quiet moments of reflection that helped to soothe raw nerves and remind the colonists of their shared humanity. Slowly, the colony began to mend the frayed threads of community, though the tension beneath the surface never fully dissipated. Elara often found herself awake in the quiet hours, haunted by questions. How long could they hold on? Would Earth ever send another signal? Or were they truly alone, forgotten in the vast expanse of space? These thoughts gnawed at her resolve, but each morning she rose with a renewed determination. The colony's survival depended not just on rationing supplies, but on sustaining hope. The chapter closes with Elara standing at the observation window, staring out into the star-speckled void. The silence presses in, but she whispers into her recorder, "We will endure. We must, for in this silence we find the strength to build something new." And just as the recorder clicks off, a faint, almost imperceptible crackle of static stirs the still air, an echo of hope in the unyielding night. The air in the command center was thick with tension, the usual hum of machinery suddenly overshadowed by a sharp, persistent alarm. Elara Quinn stood amidst the gathered engineers and council members, her eyes scanning the reports flashing across the holo displays. A critical failure had been detected in the colony's primary life support system, a fault deep in the atmospheric filtration modules that threatened breathable air circulation. The engineers believed the damage was serious and beyond immediate repair, without replacement parts salvaged from the old outpost ruins some kilometers beyond the colony's dome. Drista Jonas Vega stepped forward, his graying hair slightly disheveled from hours of troubleshooting. "The filtration system's core components have degraded beyond their repair threshold," he explained, voice steady but laced with concern. "Our stockpile of replacements is exhausted. We either send a team out to salvage from the old outpost or prepare for rationed air circulation, which would be catastrophic in the long term." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The colony had been grappling with dwindling resources and the psychological weight of Earth's silence for months now. This new threat felt like a cruel crescendo. Elara's gaze hardened, her mind racing through options. As former communications officer, she was no stranger to pressure, but this was different. This was life or death, not just for her, but for every colonist relying on the fragile ecosystem they'd built from dust and hope. "I volunteer to lead the salvage mission," she said, her voice cutting through the uneasy silence. All eyes turned to her, surprise flickering alongside respect. It was a dangerous proposition. The terrain outside the dome was unforgiving, filled with jagged rock formations and unpredictable weather patterns. The old outpost had been abandoned years ago after a series of failures and mysterious disappearances. Jonas nodded slowly. "Elara, it's a perilous journey, but your leadership and expertise make you the best choice. We'll prepare a team and the necessary gear." Maya Singh stepped forward, her warm smile steadying the nervous energy in the room. "We'll support you every step of the way. Medical supplies, psychological support, whatever you need." Over the next few hours, the colony mobilized. Liam Ortega tightened inventory protocols to allocate resources for the mission, and Sophia Kim worked tirelessly to enhance communications equipment, hoping to maintain contact during the expedition. Elara spent the evening preparing, methodically checking her gear. The exploration suit was bulky but essential, shielding against the harsh environment beyond the dome. She ran diagnostics on her oxygen supply and emergency beacon, the cold metallic click of the equipment a stark reminder of the stakes. As dawn broke, the colony gathered at the airlock. The sun cast a pale light over the desolate landscape, endless rocky plains, punctuated by the skeletal remains of the old outpost. The silence was oppressive, a tangible weight pressing on Elara's chest. Maya placed a steady hand on Elara's shoulder. "We're all with you. Bring us home more than just parts." Elara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She stepped into the airlock, the hiss of decompression sharp in her ears. As the outer door sealed behind her, the vast alien world stretched before her, a lonely frontier where hope and fear collided. The mission was more than a salvage operation. It was a test of endurance, leadership, and the fragile thread of trust that bound the colony together. Failure was not an option, but the unknown beyond the dome promised trials that would push every member of the team to their limits. With steady breath, Elara set out across the barren expanse, each step echoing the silent promise to return with the means to keep their home alive. The last broadcast from Earth was gone, but here in the shadow of isolation, a new voice was rising, the determined heartbeat of survival. The airlock hissed open, releasing the sterile atmosphere of the colony and ushering the team into the alien wilderness beyond. Elara stepped forward first, her boots crunching against the dry, cracked ground. The sky above was an endless expanse of muted gray, a color so dull it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Around her, the barren landscape stretched like a desolate sea, cracked earth spreading to jagged rock formations that jutted like the ribs of some long-dead creature. The silence was absolute, no birdsong, no rustle of leaves, no distant hum of machinery, just the soft, mechanical whirring of their suits' life support systems. It was a silence so complete that it pressed against Elara's eardrums, filling the space where hope might have lived with a weight that felt almost physical. "Keep close," Elara's voice came through the comms, steady despite the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. "Dra." Jonas Vega followed, his steps measured, eyes scanning the horizon behind thick glasses fogged slightly by the suit's interior. Sophia Kim moved next, adjusting her headset to pick up any faint signals, fingers trembling just a little as she worked. Last was Ravi Patel, his movements sharp and alert, a steady sentinel against any unforeseen threat. They moved as a unit, navigating the cracked terrain with practiced caution, each step echoing the fragility of their mission. The colony's survival depended on what they could salvage from the relics of the past, equipment that could extend life support, spare parts for failing systems. Anything that might stave off the creeping death of dwindling supplies. Elara's eyes darted constantly, searching for signs of life or remnants of the lost outpost rumored to have been here years ago. The silence pressed in, and she felt it not just in her ears, but in the hollow in her chest, a loneliness so profound it threatened to swallow her resolve. Atop a ridge, she paused, scanning the horizon. The land rolled out endlessly, a bleak expanse under the ashen sky. No movement stirred, no signal flickered on their instruments save for the faint, irregular pulses Sophia tirelessly tried to decode. The oppressive quiet was a reminder of the colony's severed connection to Earth, a void where communication once thrived. This place. "It feels like the graveyard of forgotten dreams," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible over the comm. "We're here to make sure our dream doesn't end the same way," Elara replied, her voice firmer than she felt. Further along, the team stumbled upon scattered debris, twisted metal fragments, and cracked containers half buried in dust. Footprints, long faded but still visible, traced erratic paths between the remnants, evidence of a hurried evacuation or failed mission. The eerie stillness around these relics seeped into their bones, a testament to the dangers that had claimed others before them. "This isn't just about supplies anymore," Jonas muttered, bending to examine a broken piece of equipment. "It's a warning." Before they could linger, a sudden gust swept across the plain, kicking up clouds of fine dust that whipped around them with a ferocity that seemed unnatural. The team scrambled for shelter behind a rocky outcrop, the howling wind drowning out even the faintest signal from their radios. Elara crouched low, hands pressed against the cold stone. The storm was a reminder of their vulnerability, how easily nature here, so alien and unforgiving, could turn against them. Yet beneath the roar of the wind, the silence returned, wrapping around them like a shroud. "We have to keep moving," Elara said once the storm subsided, voice resolute. "The colony's counting on us." The mission pressed on, each step a battle against the weight of the unknown. The silence was more than absence, it was a presence, a force that tested their sanity and their will to survive. But in the depths of that silence, Elara found a spark of something else, determination. To endure, to uncover the truth, to fight for their home, even if that home was a world forgotten by the stars. As they prepared to return, the sun dipped low beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the barren land. The silence remained, but now it was punctuated by the steady rhythm of their footsteps, a heartbeat in the void. "We were not alone," Elara whispered into her recorder later that night, voice thick with emotion. "Not while we remember. Not while we fight." The journey into the silence was far from over, but for the first time since Earth's last broadcast faded, there was a flicker of hope amid the void. The harsh alien sun hung low on the horizon as we crested the final ridge, our boots crunching against the brittle, rust-colored soil that stretched out in all directions. Ahead, the silhouette of a ruined outpost emerged, its skeletal metal structures casting long shadows that seemed to reach out like ghostly fingers into the cold air. We paused, breath caught in our chests. It was the kind of discovery that felt both like a beacon and a warning. There, Sophia whispered, her voice barely above the whistling wind. An old settlement. Looks abandoned for years. I nodded, eyes scanning the broken frames and twisted cables that hung like vines from the corroded scaffolding. This was more than just a place to scavenge for equipment. It was a relic of failure, a monument to hope lost in the vast silence that had swallowed Earth's voice. Dra. Jonas Vega adjusted his glasses, already pulling out a tablet to record the coordinates and preliminary observations. If this outpost failed, it might explain the radio silence we've been experiencing. Something catastrophic must have happened here. The weight of his words settled like a stone in my stomach. Our mission was no longer simply about salvaging life-sustaining gear. It was about confronting the stark reality that we might be alone in this silent void, abandoned not just by Earth's signals, but perhaps by fate itself. We moved cautiously through the derelict structures, the crunch of our boots echoing eerily in the hollow corridors. The stale air inside smelled faintly of burnt circuits and dust, a ghostly reminder of the lives that had once filled these halls. I ran my gloved fingers over a shattered console, the faded symbols and blinking lights hinting at a desperate last attempt to send a message, one that never reached us. Suddenly, a sharp cry shattered the uneasy silence. Turning, I saw Jonas collapse, clutching his leg with a grimace of pain. A jagged piece of metal protruded from his shin, blood dark against the pale fabric of his pants.
Joss!
Sophia rushed to his side, her hands steady but quick. "We need to get you stabilized." The urgency of the moment forced me to switch from explorer to leader. "Help me get him to the rover," I ordered, my voice firm despite the surge of panic inside. "We can't risk infection out here." As we carefully lifted him, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ruins into a cold twilight. The alien stars began to pierce the deepening sky, indifferent observers to our struggle. The silence around us felt heavier now, as if the outpost itself mourned with us. Back at the camp near the ruins, the sterile hum of the medical equipment contrasted sharply with the raw wilderness outside. I sat beside Jonas, monitoring his vitals and trying to mask the unspoken fear gnawing at my resolve. "Why didn't anyone come for them?" Sophia asked softly, breaking the silence. I shook my head, eyes fixed on the flickering lights of the outpost control room. That's the question I've been asking myself since we found this place. What happened here? And more importantly, will we meet the same fate? As night deepened, I pulled out my recorder and began speaking, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Audio log, day 12 of the mission. We found a failed colony outpost today. Its silence is louder than any broadcast we've ever received. Jonas is injured but stable. The outpost's logs are fragmented, but they hint at a cascade of failures: technical, environmental, and possibly social. It's a grim mirror of what could be our own future. Yet amidst this darkness, there is a flicker of hope. We carry the lessons of this place with us, a warning and a guide. Tomorrow, we begin the task of salvaging what we can, not just for survival, but for understanding. Because in the silence, we must find our voice. The wind outside whispered through the broken walls, a mournful lullaby to the lost. Yet, inside me, a stubborn ember of determination burned brighter than ever. We were not just survivors. We were the last hope, the fragile link between forgotten pasts and uncertain tomorrows. The night stretched on, and I let the recorder run, capturing not just the facts, but the raw human emotion, the fear, the hope, the aching loneliness that defined us. This was our story now, etched in silence but spoken through the courage to endure. The discovery of the outpost was a turning point. It forced us to reckon with the possibility that Earth's silence was no accident, that the void we faced was deeper and darker than we had imagined. But it also steeled my resolve. If those before us had fallen, we would rise. If the silence sought to claim us, we would speak louder. And if the stars above were witnesses to our fate, then let them know we chose to fight, to survive, and to hope. The mission was far from over. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the alien sky in hues of orange and violet, I stood and looked toward the ruins once more. The past was broken, but the future was ours to build, and in the silence I would find our voice. Prepare for tomorrow, I told the team, my gaze steady. We salvage what we can, and we come home. The words hung in the air, a promise and a challenge. The last broadcast from Earth had faded, but our story was just beginning. The air was thick with unease as the salvage team returned to the colony, their arrival stirring a restlessness that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. Elara stepped out from the shuttle, the weight of the mission's discoveries pressing heavily on her chest. Around her, the colony's main hub was alive with murmurs, quick exchanges between colonists whose eyes darted nervously. Voices hushed but urgent spread the news like wildfire: the abandoned outpost, the signs of failure, the silence from Earth stretching ever longer. Elara's sharp eyes scanned the crowd, catching flashes of fear, doubt, and suspicion. The fragile veneer of calm the colony had maintained was cracking. She felt the familiar pang of isolation tighten its grip as she realized that the mission meant more than just new data. It had shaken the foundation of their community. Inside the communal hall, the atmosphere was electric and volatile. Colonists packed the space, their faces drawn tight with anxiety. Dre. Jonas Vega stood at the front, his usually measured tone now edged with frustration as he recounted the mission's findings. The outpost was abandoned in chaos, he explained. Systems failed, supplies depleted. It's a stark warning about our own vulnerability. Voices quickly rose in response. Liam Ortega, standing near the back, challenged the leadership's decisions with a sharpness that echoed through the room. How can we trust that we were being told everything? What else is being hidden from us? Maya Singh stepped forward, her calming presence attempting to temper the growing storm. We need unity now more than ever, she urged softly, but her words were nearly drowned out by the rising tide of accusations and fear. Elara found herself in the eye of the storm, fielding questions and allegations that cut deeper than any physical threat. The community she had worked so hard to support was unraveling, their shared hope eroding under the weight of uncertainty. The silence from Earth was no longer just an absence of signal. It had become a specter haunting every conversation. Later that night, Elara withdrew to her quarters, the hum of life support and distant mechanical noises her only companions. She activated her recorder, her voice low and wary. Today, the colony's faith in each other was tested and found wanting. The fear is palpable. We were standing on the edge of something dangerous, and I don't yet know if we can pull back from it. But we must. Outside her door, Maya moved quietly through the dim-lit corridors, checking on colonists whose faces bore the strain of the day's conflicts. Her soft words and gentle touches tried to stitch the fraying bonds, offering moments of solace in a time of despair. As the colony teetered on the brink, Elara understood that their survival depended not only on rationing supplies or repairing systems, but on mending the fragile trust that kept them together. The silence from Earth was more than a void, it was a test of their humanity, one they had to pass if they were to endure. The night stretched long and restless, the colony caught between the echoes of the past and the uncertain promise of tomorrow. And as Elara's eyes closed, she clung to a flicker of hope that from this fracture, a stronger community might yet emerge. But the question remained unspoken yet heavy. Could they overcome the fear and suspicion before it consumed them all? The answer would shape the fate of the colony and the legacy of those left to face the silence alone. The fragile peace of the colony had been shattered, and the path forward was fraught with peril. Yet somewhere deep inside, Elara knew that their story was far from over. They would have to fight not just against the harsh world outside, but the fractures growing within. The night held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The metallic clang of the communal hall doors echoed ominously as Elara stepped inside, her boots feeling heavier with each step. The once orderly, if tense, atmosphere had erupted into a boiling tempest of voices, sharp words cutting through the stale, recycled air like shards of glass. Faces turned toward her, some etched with exhaustion, others flushed with anger or fear. The dim fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to dance with the unrest in the room. She took a deep breath, steadying herself against the weight of expectation. The colony was unraveling. The hidden tensions that had simmered beneath the surface were now exposed, raw and threatening to tear apart the fragile fabric of their community. Liam Ortega's recent discovery of the hidden cache had sparked hope, but also suspicion. Who knew what other secrets were kept from the group? And with supplies dwindling relentlessly, trust had become a scarce commodity. The first eruption came from Liam himself. His voice rang out, sharp and commanding, as he slammed a fist against the metal table that served as the meeting's center. "We can't afford leniency anymore," he barked. "Every ration, every tool must be accounted for. No exceptions, no favoritism. We're running out of time." Murmurs of agreement and dissent rippled through the crowd. Some nodded with grim resolve. Others whispered of unfairness and desperation. The room felt charged, the atmosphere thick with unspoken fears. Elara's gaze swept over the assembly. Drer! Jonas Vega stood near the back, arms crossed tightly, his spectacles catching the light as he watched with a mixture of skepticism and concern. Maya Singh moved quietly among the colonists, offering small gestures of comfort, her presence a soothing balm amid the rising storm. Taking her place at the head of the table, Elara raised her hands to command silence. "We are at a crossroads," she began, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I know the strain is immense. We all feel it, the silence from Earth, the dwindling supplies, the shadows creeping into our minds. But tearing each other apart won't save us." A voice from the crowd shot back. "But what choice do we have? How can we trust those who keep secrets or make decisions for us without our say?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Elara nodded slowly, acknowledging the pain beneath the accusation. "Transparency is vital. From now on, we will hold regular assemblies, share all information openly. We must rebuild trust, no matter how difficult." The tension did not immediately ease, but a ripple of cautious hope stirred. Maya stepped forward, her warm smile and calm tone weaving threads of empathy through frayed nerves. "We have survived much together," she reminded them. "Our strength lies in unity, in caring for each other. Let's not lose sight of that now." Despite these efforts, the fault lines within the colony were undeniable. Factions formed, those clinging to hope and community, and those driven by fear and pragmatism, willing to push harsh measures to survive. Elara felt the crushing burden of leadership, the thin line she must walk between authority and compassion. Later, alone in her quarters, Elara sat before her recorder, her fingers trembling slightly as she pressed record. Today was a breaking point, she whispered into the mic. "The colony is fractured but not broken. I see the fear in their eyes, the anger in their words, but also the flicker of something else, the stubborn refusal to give in. We face the silence not just outside, but within ourselves. I don't know if we can hold together, but I have to believe we can. For their sake and for mine." The night deepened, and the colony's silence resumed its oppressive weight. Yet beneath it, a fragile ember of resolve glowed, a promise that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit could find a way to endure. But the question lingered, unspoken but pressing. How long before the fractures become irreparable? And when the next crisis comes, will the colony stand united or fall apart? Elara switched off the recorder, the quiet click echoing through the stillness. Tomorrow would demand everything she had and more. She steeled herself for the battles ahead, both external and within. Outside, the cold stars blinked indifferently, their distant light a reminder of a home that might never answer again. And still, they would survive. The communal hall remained empty now, the echoes of the day's turmoil fading into a haunted silence. Somewhere, deep inside the colony's heart, fragile bonds were being reforged, thread by thread, in the face of a silence that threatened to consume them all. Elara's eyes closed briefly. The fight was far from over, but she would not let them fall. The night stretched on, long and unyielding, but within her, a quiet fire burned, the last broadcast of hope in the vast expanse of silence. And tomorrow they would face it together. The air in the communication room was thick with a quiet that felt almost sacred, broken only by the faint whir of cooling fans and the soft, rhythmic tapping of Elara's fingers against the console. She sat hunched over the microphone, the cold light from the screen casting sharp shadows across her lean face. Her dark eyes, usually so sharp and alert, seemed distant, reflecting the weight of countless sleepless nights spent wrestling with doubt and despair. Log entry, Sol 412. Elara began, her voice steady but carrying a subtle tremor that betrayed the emotions beneath her pragmatic exterior. The silence from Earth is no longer just an absence of signal. It is a growing echo in our minds, an oppressive presence that fills the spaces where hope used to live. Today, fractures within the colony are no longer whispers behind closed doors, but open wounds bleeding distrust and fear. She paused, swallowing hard, the microphone picking up the faint catch in her breath. I find myself questioning everything, my decisions, my leadership, even the very purpose of our survival. Am I leading us into a future, or merely prolonging an inevitable end? The recording light blinked steadily, marking time as Elara let the silence stretch between her words. She reached out and pressed a button to pause the log, leaning back in her chair as exhaustion settled deep in her bones. The colony's fractures were no secret, but admitting them aloud felt like tearing open a wound to let the infection breathe. Yet, Elara knew that hiding the truth would only make the rot spread faster. It was in these moments of painful honesty that she hoped to spark a flicker of understanding, a bridge back to the fragile unity they once had. Outside the communication room, the colony's common area was dimly lit, the harsh fluorescent lights softened by the warm glow of a few scattered lamps. Maya Singh moved among the colonists with a quiet grace, her warm smile and steady presence a balm to the frayed nerves and anxious hearts around her. She had organized a small gathering, a deliberate attempt to stitch back the torn fabric of the community. The room buzzed softly with tentative conversations, the sound of laughter and voices rising like fragile bubbles against the heavy atmosphere of fear. Maya's voice rose above the murmur, gentle but firm. "We are more than just survivors," she said, her eyes sweeping over the tired faces before her. "We are a community. And communities thrive not because they are perfect, but because they hold on to hope and care for one another, especially when everything else feels lost." Her words seemed to settle the restless energy, drawing a thread of warmth through the crowd. For a moment, the colony felt less like a fractured outpost on a forgotten world, and more like a family clinging together against the dark. But even as the gathering blossomed with cautious optimism, the undercurrent of tension remained. Later that evening, during a meeting called to address the growing resource concerns and leadership disputes, old grievances surfaced with sharp edges. Voices rose, accusations flew, and the fragile truce threatened to shatter. Yet, amid the storm, Elara stood firm, her voice cutting through the chaos with a calm authority born of desperation and determination. "We cannot afford to tear ourselves apart," she said, meeting each angry gaze with unwavering steadiness. "Our survival depends on unity, on remembering that we share a fate none of us chose but all of us must face. Division will only hasten our downfall." Her words hung heavy in the air, a challenge and a plea. Slowly, the shouting subsided, replaced by reluctant nods and murmurs of agreement. It was not victory, but it was a beginning, a fragile step toward healing. After the meeting, Elara found herself alone with Maya in a quiet corridor. The tension of the day softened by shared exhaustion. They leaned against opposite walls, their eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. "It's harder than I thought," Elara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "To be the voice of hope when I feel so lost inside." Maya smiled gently, stepping closer. "You're not alone in that. None of us are, but we have each other, and that's something worth fighting for." The simple words carried a weight that settled into Elara's heart, a flicker of warmth in the cold void that had threatened to consume her. Together, they looked out at the colony, flashing lights in the darkness, faces etched with fear and resilience, a community battered but not broken. The silence still loomed, a shadow over their future, but beneath it burned a fragile ember of hope. Elara pressed record on her console once more, her voice steady and resolute. "We will face the darkness, not as isolated souls, but as a united people. Our voices, though born in the silence, will carry us forward. This is our story." And with that, the colony took its first steps toward rebuilding not just their supplies or technology, but the bonds that made them human. The night stretched on, heavy with uncertainty but alive with possibility. As the last broadcast faded into a new beginning, the oppressive silence was no longer just a void outside our settlement. It had seeped inside, into the very bones of the colony, twisting itself into something far more insidious. I first noticed it in the restless tossing of Liam Ortega, who used to be the embodiment of pragmatism and discipline. His usual steady gaze had become jittery, his movements sharp and suspicious, as if the shadows themselves whispered threats. One evening, as I passed the storage bay on my way back from a systems check, I caught him standing motionless, eyes fixed on some unseen disturbance. When I asked, he shrugged, voice low and tense. "It's like the silence is watching." That phrase haunted me. The silence, once just the absence of Earth's voice, had grown into an entity unyielding, omnipresent, a predator stalking our minds. It fed on our fears and seeded doubts, gnawing at the fragile trust that held us together. Inside my quarters, the nights stretched interminably. Sleep became a battleground where nightmares crept in with uncanny clarity. I would awaken drenched in cold sweat, heart hammering, the echo of screams reverberating in my skull. The darkness beyond the window was absolute, a vast abyss that mirrored the void within. Sometimes I thought I heard faint whispers, indistinct yet urgent, as if the silence itself spoke in tongues too dreadful to understand. Maya Singh was my tether. She moved through the colony with a quiet grace, a balm for fraying nerves. One evening, sensing the rising tension, she organized a small gathering in the common hall. The room was dimly lit, the soft hum of the life support system the only sound. Colonists gathered hesitantly, their faces etched with fatigue and worry. Maya's voice was steady but gentle as she spoke of resilience, of shared strength, urging us to lean on one another. "We cannot let the silence define us," she said. "We must be the noise, the laughter, the stories, the songs. That is how we survive." Her words sparked a fragile warmth, but the shadows lingered. Not everyone was convinced. The psychological toll was visible in every wary glance, every whispered conversation behind closed doors. Jonas Vega, ever the skeptic, held a meeting to address the growing unrest. His graying hair was disheveled, and his glasses caught the light as he paced before us. "Isolation is a known catalyst for mental deterioration," he explained, voice firm. "We are witnessing symptoms of acute stress disorder, possibly early stages of group psychosis if left unchecked. We must implement strict routines, encourage open communication, and monitor each other closely." Some colonists nodded, relief flickering in their eyes, while others crossed their arms, doubtful. Jonas's scientific approach clashed with the emotional undercurrents Maya tended to. I found myself caught between their worlds, the cold logic of survival and the warm thread of human connection. The nights grew darker still, I kept recording my audio logs, searching for clarity amid confusion. In one entry, I confessed, the silence is more than the absence of sound. It is a presence, a weight that presses down on our souls, threatening to crush the very essence of who we are. I could see the same struggle mirrored in Maya's soft smiles that never quite reached her eyes, and in Jonas's tired sighs when no one was watching. One afternoon, as I walked the perimeter, the alien landscape stretched endlessly under a pale, unmoving sky. The wind was absent, the usual creaks of the settlement eerily silent. I paused, my breath visible in the cold air, and felt the crushing solitude settle over me. The silence was a foe no one had prepared us for. That night, a loud bang jolted the colony awake. Panic flared as we scrambled to secure the perimeter. It was only a malfunctioning vent, but the fear it unleashed stayed with us. Paranoia had taken root. Trust, once our strongest asset, was fraying. In the aftermath, Maya and I held a private conversation. "We have to find a way to fight this," she whispered, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "If the silence wins, we lose everything." I nodded, feeling the weight of leadership settle heavier than ever. We began organizing more frequent gatherings, encouraging storytelling and shared tasks to keep minds engaged. Jonas developed a schedule for mental health check-ins, blending scientific monitoring with emotional support. Slowly, the colony began to respond. The nightmares didn't vanish, but the shared experience lessened their sting. The silence remained, a lurking threat, but our defiance grew stronger. As I recorded my final log of the day, I spoke into the microphone, the words steady despite the turmoil inside. "We may be surrounded by silence, but within us burns a spark fragile, yes, yet unyielding. This is our rebellion against oblivion, we endure." The air inside the conference room was thick with unspoken tension, the hum of the colony's life support systems a distant background drone. Elara sat across from Dre. Jonas Vega, their once frequent clashes now tempered by the pressing need for unity. Between them lay a holographic display pulsing softly with data resource levels, energy consumption rates, and projected survival timelines. Each flick of the interface revealed grim statistics, but also a map toward potential solutions. Elara's sharp eyes scanned the projections, noting how Jonas's calculations accounted for every ounce of oxygen, every watt of power. His scientific rigor was undeniable, but what had once felt like cold detachment now seemed to hold a careful hope beneath the surface. Jonas met her gaze, and for a moment, the stubborn pragmatism that had defined their exchanges softened. "We can stretch the oxygen reserves by adjusting the life support cycles," Jonas said quietly, pointing to a series of graphs that showed consumption dipping over time. "But it means stricter rationing of power for recreational systems. The colony's social spaces will have to be scaled back." Elara nodded, feeling the familiar weight of leadership settle across her shoulders. "That's a tough sell, but necessary. Maya's been working on morale initiatives, and we'll need to lean on those more than ever." Jonas's lips twitched into a rare smile. Perhaps science and spirit aren't so incompatible after all. Their collaboration marked a turning point. Elara reached out to Maya Singh, whose warmth and optimism had become a vital counterbalance to the colony's growing despair. Together, the three crafted an integrated plan, technical measures to conserve vital resources, paired with community activities designed to nurture emotional resilience. Maya organized small gatherings in the communal hall, transforming it into a haven against the suffocating silence from Earth. Soft artificial lights bathed the room in a gentle glow, while colonists shared stories, music, and laughter, a fragile but fierce assertion of life. These moments, fleeting as they were, rekindled bonds strained by fear and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Elara found solace in her private moments by the viewport, her audio recorder capturing reflections that would become a testament to the colony's evolving spirit. The alien landscape stretched endlessly under the fading twilight, a stark reminder of their isolation, yet also a symbol of their resolve. Survival here, Elara whispered into the recorder one evening, is no longer just about physical endurance. It's about holding onto the fragile threads of hope and connection, weaving them into a tapestry strong enough to withstand the silence. Jonas took the lead in presenting their comprehensive survival plan to the colony's leadership council. His voice was steady, his passion evident as he detailed the new resource management protocols and the importance of community cohesion. Elara and Maya stood beside him, embodying the fusion of pragmatism and empathy that would guide their people forward. The response was a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. For the first time in weeks, the colony saw a path not just of survival, but of renewal. The combined efforts of science and spirit kindled a fragile hope that this isolated group of humans could endure the unknown. Yet, as the meeting concluded and the crowd dispersed, Elara's thoughts lingered on the horizon. The silence from Earth remained an ever-present shadow, an invisible adversary. But now, armed with unity and purpose, the colony was ready to face whatever came next. The night deepened and Elara's recorder clicked off, the last sound a breath drawn steady and resolute. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt within reach. The glow of the communications console bathed the room in an eerie blue light, its flickering patterns casting restless shadows across Sophia Kim's focused face. She worked with a precision born of years in the cramped, recycled air confines of the colony's comms hub, her fingers dancing over the controls as she sifted through a tangled web of static and distortion. The faint signals, once dismissed as mere noise, had begun to take shape over the past weeks, fragments of Earth's last transmissions that teased the edges of comprehension. Tonight, something was different. Elara Quinn stood silently behind Sophia, her posture tense but steady, the sharp lines of her face illuminated by the screen's pale light. The colony's isolation pressed on her like a weight she carried in every breath, but tonight, that weight felt slightly lighter. The signals weren't just static anymore. They were words broken and partial but undeniable. "Here," Sophia whispered, her voice barely above the hum of machinery. "I'm getting something, it's a message." Elara leaned in, eyes narrowing as the garbled audio began to resolve into recognizable phrases. The speakers crackled, then stilled into a haunting clarity that filled the cramped room. The voice was wary but resolute, carrying the unmistakable urgency of Earth's final moments. A voice that told of devastation, but also of a plan, a flicker of hope amid catastrophe. "This is Earth Command," the message began, distorted but coherent. "Critical infrastructure failure, widespread loss. We cannot maintain direct contact. Our survival depends on you, the colony. We are preparing a rescue. Hold fast. Trust in our return." The words struck the room like a thunderclap wrapped in a whisper. Elara's heart pounded not from fear, but from the fragile flame of hope the message ignited. It was a lifeline thrown across the void, fragile and fraught with uncertainty, but real. "It's more than I dared hope," Elara admitted, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "We have to share this. We have to prepare." Sophia nodded, eyes still glued to the screen as she worked to clarify the transmission further. The message was incomplete. Gaps yawned where data had been lost, but the essence remained: Earth was broken but not defeated. Rescue was possible, though distant. "We need to tell the others," Elara said, already moving toward the door. "Maya will help us get the word out." The communal hall was a stark contrast to the quiet intensity of the communications room. Here the colonists gathered in small clusters, faces drawn tight by weeks of uncertainty and dwindling supplies. When Elara entered, the murmur of conversation dipped, eyes turning toward her with a mix of hope and skepticism. Maya Singh stepped forward, her warm smile a balm against the cold fear that had settled over the group. "We've received a message from Earth," Elara announced, her voice carrying across the room. "It's a sign that help may be coming, that we're not forgotten." A ripple of disbelief passed through the crowd, quickly replaced by cautious murmurs of encouragement. Hands clasped each other, shoulders straightened, and the fragile threads of hope began to weave anew through the community. Maya's voice rose, steady and nurturing, as she urged unity and resilience. Meanwhile, in the quieter corners of the colony's command center, Drea, Jonas, Vega and Elara met to discuss the implications. Jonas's skepticism was tempered by the undeniable impact of the message on morale. Together, they weighed the colony's resources against the uncertainty of rescue, formulating plans that balanced hope with the harsh realities of survival. "We can't rely on Earth," Jonas cautioned, tapping his tablet thoughtfully. "But this message changes the equation. We have to prepare for both outcomes: rescue and self-sufficiency." Elara nodded, the familiar burden of leadership settling on her shoulders. "We'll hold on to hope," she said quietly, "but we'll build our future here, no matter what comes." As the colony rallied around this flicker of hope, the silence that had once seemed so absolute began to crack. The weight of isolation was still there, but now tempered by a fragile promise, a reason to endure, to fight, and to believe in a future beyond the void. Elara's audio logs captured it all, her voice steady as she chronicled this pivotal moment, the dawn of a new chapter, where despair met determination, and silence met the first echoes of hope. The message from Earth, though incomplete and distant, had rekindled the colony's spirit. Yet, beneath the renewed optimism lay the ever-present question: could they survive long enough to see that promise fulfilled? The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, the colony dared to imagine a future where they were not alone. Elara closed her log with a whispered vow: "We will endure, we must. For Earth, for ourselves, for the silence that will no longer define us." Outside, the alien stars blinked cold and distant, indifferent witnesses to the fragile hope blossoming in the hearts of humanity's last outpost. The hum of the communication console was a constant companion in the otherwise somber silence of the colony's central hub. Elara Quinn sat before it, her silhouette etched against the faint glow of blinking lights and the darkened viewport beyond. The room was cold, sterile, but it held the last tether to a world that now felt impossibly distant. For weeks, months, maybe she had sat here, listening to the void. The last faint echoes of Earth's broadcast had vanished like a dying star's final flicker, leaving nothing but static and silence. Her fingers lightly brushed the console's surface as she activated the recorder. Audio log day 287, she began, her voice low yet steady, carrying the weight of exhaustion and a stubborn spark of determination. "It's been longer than we dared imagine without a word from home. The silence isn't just an absence of sound, it feels like a presence, pressing in on us, reminding us of what's been lost. I still listen, hoping, but the void answers with nothing." The isolation that had once felt like a physical barrier now stretched into the emotional realm, thick and suffocating. The colony had moved past disbelief and denial. Now, the waiting had become an endless test of endurance. Every colonist carried the heavy knowledge that Earth might have forgotten them, or worse, that Earth itself might no longer exist as they remembered. Elara leaned back in her chair, eyes closing briefly. Memories of her family, lost in the chaos back on Earth, surged forward, faces blurred by time and distance, voices now silent. She had come to the colony seeking connection, a new beginning, but found only absence. The H was unbearable. Yet, amidst this crushing solitude, a fragile resolve began to take root. "We cannot wait forever," Elara whispered to herself, voice barely audible. "We must live here and now." Later that day, the communal hall was alive with quiet murmurs and soft footsteps. Colonists gathered in small clusters, sharing stories of their lives before the colony, memories of Earth that tethered them to a vanished home. Maya Singh moved gracefully among them, her warm smile a beacon in the dimly lit room. She offered gentle words, a soothing presence for those whose spirits teetered on the edge of despair. The stories were tinged with sorrow and longing, but they also wove a tapestry of shared experience and collective strength. For a moment, the silence was broken not by signals from Earth, but by human voices knitting together a fragile community. Outside, Drea, Jonas Vega stood beneath the alien sky, his breath visible in the cold air as he adjusted the sensor array. The wind tugged at his coat, carrying the scent of strange minerals and distant dust storms. His eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign that Earth had not abandoned them completely. The scientist in him clung to hope, but the pragmatist knew better. Still, he persisted, driven by a stubborn need to understand the silence, to find any clue that could pierce the void. Elara found herself drawn to the large viewport overlooking the barren landscape. The stars above were cold and distant, their light traveling across unimaginable expanses of space and time. She pressed her palm to the glass, feeling the chill seep through. The silence of the universe was overwhelming, a vast emptiness that threatened to swallow the colony's fragile hope. Yet within that silence, Elara sensed a new beginning. The colony was no longer merely a waiting room for rescue, it was a home, a crucible for survival forged in isolation. The challenge was not to cling to the past, but to embrace the unknown future with courage. She turned away from the window, determination hardening her features. "We will endure," she said aloud. "We will build from this silence." Her audio log ended with a quiet but resolute vow, a message not just for herself, but for every colonist struggling beneath the weight of abandonment. The long wait had tested their souls, but it would not break them. In the stillness, they would find strength. In the silence, they would create a new voice. As the colony settled into the long night, Elara's thoughts drifted to the future, not a distant, uncertain rescue, but the life they would forge with their own hands. The stars outside shone cold and indifferent, but inside the dome, the flicker of human resilience burned brighter than ever. The journey ahead was daunting, but it was theirs to claim, and in that realization, hope was reborn. The hum of the colony's life support systems was a constant reminder of the delicate balance they maintained, a fragile thread holding their existence together on this distant world. In the central hall, a space once filled with anxious murmurs and fractured voices, a quiet transformation was underway. Elara Quinn stood before the gathered colonists, her sharp eyes scanning the faces illuminated by the soft, artificial lighting. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on her shoulders, yet tonight her voice carried a steady confidence that seemed to buoy the entire room. "We can no longer wait for a call that may never come," Elara began, her tone resolute but gentle. "Our future lies here. In this colony we have built from dust and silence. It's time we take full ownership of our survival, not as remnants waiting for rescue, but as pioneers forging a new path." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, an undercurrent of hope threading its way through years of uncertainty. For so long, the colonists had clung to the faintest flickers of Earth's signals, desperate to maintain a connection to a home that now seemed to recede into oblivion. But those signals had ceased, and the silence that followed was no longer just an absence of sound, it was a call to action. Maya Singh moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her warm smile a balm to the wary souls around her. She was already coordinating plans for community gatherings, knowing that emotional resilience was as vital as physical survival. Tonight, she would organize a communal meal in the dining hall, a simple act of togetherness that would help knit the colony's fraying bonds into something stronger. As Elara spoke, the colony's future began to take shape, a collective vision where scientific ingenuity, emotional support, and pragmatic leadership intersected. Jonas Vega was already at work with her, poring over the schematics of the life support systems. The earlier clashes between his cautious skepticism and her hopeful pragmatism had given way to a powerful partnership. Together they devised modifications to extend resource efficiency, balancing risk with innovation. "We can't afford another failure," Jonas said carefully, tracing a finger over the schematic. "But if we push the system just enough, we might gain critical time." Elara nodded, appreciating the tempered optimism in his voice. "We will need everyone's support to make this work. No more divisions." Meanwhile, Liam Ortega reviewed the colonists' dwindling supplies with a furrowed brow. His role as supply manager was fraught with tension. Every ration cut was a potential spark for unrest. Yet, under Elara's new leadership, Liam found himself part of a more transparent, cooperative system. Together, they established clearer protocols for resource management, emphasizing fairness and long-term sustainability. The hidden cache bought us some breathing room, Liam admitted during a strategy meeting. But we need to plan as if there will be no more shipments. Elara met his gaze steadily. Then we make this colony self-sufficient. We adapt, innovate, and endure. The days that followed were filled with renewed energy. Workshops were organized to teach colonists skills beyond their original roles. Agricultural modules were expanded, and water reclamation systems were upgraded. Maya's community initiatives flourished. The shared meals and gatherings became a sanctuary from the ever-present silence, infusing the colony with a sense of belonging and purpose. At night, Elara recorded her audio logs with a new sense of clarity. No longer were they just chronicles of despair, but testaments to resilience. Her voice carried the weight of the colony's history and the spark of its future. We are no longer waiting for a lifeline from Earth. She reflected softly into the recorder. We are the lifeline. Yet beneath this hopeful determination, the challenges were immense. The psychological toll of isolation lingered like a shadow, and the scarcity of resources was a constant threat. But Elara's leadership, bolstered by the support of Maya, Jonas, Liam, and Sophia, was forging a community ready to face the silence head-on. As the colony settled into this new chapter, the silence from Earth was no longer just an absence, it was a space to fill with their own voices, their own stories, and their own future. The last broadcast was behind them, but the first steps toward a lasting legacy were just beginning. And in the quiet that followed, Elara felt a flicker of something profound, a hope born not from signals across the void, but from the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be forgotten. We build from silence, she whispered into the dark, because this is our home now. The main hall was filled with a quiet murmur, a soft undercurrent of voices that had not spoken so freely in weeks. The artificial lights cast a warm glow over the gathered colonists, their faces reflecting a blend of hope and lingering uncertainty. Maya Singh stood near the front, her presence calm yet commanding attention. She had spent days preparing for this moment, the first communal gathering in many cycles, designed not just to share news, but to heal the invisible fractures that had begun to split the colony apart. Elara sat near the back, her sharp eyes catching every detail, the tentative smiles, the guarded glances, the hands nervously twisting sleeves or exchanging small gestures of reassurance. It was a fragile tapestry of human connection, one Maya was determined to strengthen. "We are more than just survivors," Maya began, her voice steady and warm. "We are a community, and communities thrive on trust and understanding." The room responded with a gentle nodding, some faces relaxing, others still tight with the weight of recent tensions. Elara felt a familiar knot loosen in her chest. This was what they needed, a space to be seen and heard, to remember they were not alone in the silence. As the evening progressed, colonists took turns sharing their stories, small victories, fears, memories of Earth, and hopes for the future. Elara listened as voices cracked with emotion, as laughter occasionally bubbled up, fragile but genuine. It was in these moments she saw the colony's heart beating anew, a pulse that had almost been lost in the oppressive quiet. Later, standing beside Maya, Elara whispered, "You've done something incredible here." Maya smiled, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "It's just the beginning. We have to keep building, day by day." Outside the gathering, the communal garden thrived under carefully calibrated lights. The green shoots pushing through soil were a living metaphor for the colony's fragile renewal. Colonists tended to the plants together, sharing knowledge and hope, a tangible symbol that life could grow even in isolation. Yet challenges remained. In a late evening discussion, Elara and Jonas Vega sat over a table scattered with schematics and ration plans. Their conversation was intense, Jonas advocating caution and efficiency, Elara urging for balance and compassion. Tensions flared but ultimately gave way to mutual respect. They forged a plan that recognized both scientific necessity and the human spirit's needs. "We can't survive on calculations alone," Elara said softly. Jonas nodded. "Nor on hope alone. We need both in equal measure." As the chapter closed, the colony stood at a crossroads, not just surviving the silence but beginning to transform it. The bonds reforged through empathy and shared purpose were fragile, yet they sparked a light that could guide them through the darkest days ahead. Elara's final audio log for the night captured this sentiment. "Tonight, we took the first steps beyond isolation. Not by ignoring the silence, but by embracing each other. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I believe we're not walking it alone." The echo of that truth lingered in the air, a promise that even in the vast emptiness, community could be a beacon and perhaps a salvation. The chill of the alien evening settled over the colony like a slow breath held in suspense. I stood before them, my people, beneath the vast canopy of unfamiliar stars, their cold glimmers sharp and distant, yet not without their own kind of beauty. The wind whispered through the sparse outcroppings of native flora, carrying with it a silence, so profound it seemed to press against every bone. This silence, the ever-present absence of Earth's voice, had become an oppressive companion, a shadow looming over our days and nights alike. Yet here we were, gathered at the heart of our home, ready to confront the silence not with fear, but with acceptance. I took a breath, the sound of it loud in my ears, and began to speak. My voice steady, even carried across the assembled faces, some illuminated by the faint glow of emergency lanterns, others cloaked in shadow. "We have lived in the silence for too long," I said, "but tonight, we choose not to let it define us. We are not abandoned. We are not forgotten, not by each other." A murmur rippled through the crowd, hesitant but growing, as if my words lit a spark in the darkness. Maya stood nearby, her warm smile a beacon of comfort, moving gently among the colonists who clung to one another in quiet conversation. Her presence was a balm, easing the weight of isolation that had settled on so many shoulders. She offered soft words and steady hands, weaving threads of connection where uncertainty threatened to unravel us. Drea. Jonas Vega was there as well, his usual skeptical gaze softened by something I could only describe as renewed hope. We exchanged a glance brief, but laden with meaning, acknowledging the fragile yet vital partnership we'd forged. Science and spirit, pragmatism and empathy had to coexist if we were to endure. The ceremony took shape organically, a collective breath exhaled into the void. We shared stories, fragments of memories from Earth, tales of hardship and triumph, dreams of futures both distant and near. As the night deepened, I invited each colonist to light a small fire, a simple flame held steady against the vast darkness. One by one, flickering lights sparked along the colony's walls, their dancing shadows a silent testament to our resilience. Standing amidst the glow, I felt the burden of loneliness shift, not vanish, but transform into something else, a stubborn ember of hope. A fierce determination to build from the silence rather than succumb to it. The colony was no longer just a place of exile. It was becoming a home forged in the crucible of adversity. "We do not know what waits beyond this night," I said, "but we know who we are. We are survivors, we are builders, we are a community. And together we will face the unknown." The words hung in the cold air, met with solemn nods and quiet affirmations. The ceremony closed not with finality, but with a beginning, a shared commitment to embrace our fate not as victims of silence, but as architects of a future born from it. As the fires flickered and the first light of dawn teased the horizon, I recorded an audio log, my voice steady despite the whirlwind inside. I spoke of hope, of resilience, of the strength found in solidarity. The colony was fragile, yes, but it was alive, and that was enough for now. The silence from Earth remained, vast and unyielding. But here, beneath alien stars and among kindred souls, we had found a new voice. a voice not lost in the void, but rising above it, steady and resolute. The journey was far from over, but tonight, we embraced the unknown together, ready to endure whatever came next. The room was quiet except for the faint, steady hum of the colony's life support systems, an almost imperceptible pulse that had become a constant companion in the months since Earth's last signal faded into silence. Elara Quinn sat alone in the small recording chamber, the soft glow of the console casting a pale light on her face. Her fingers hovered for a moment over the control panel before she pressed the record button, and the red light blinked on. "This is Elara Quinn, recording the final broadcast from the Earth colony," she began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of years spent in uncertainty. "No one left to hear this but ourselves, perhaps, but it matters all the same. We began this journey with hope, a hope tethered to the distant light of a home that, sadly, has gone dark." Her eyes drifted to the small viewport beside her, where the alien landscape stretched beneath an indigo sky. The stars blinked faintly overhead, indifferent witnesses to their plight. Elara swallowed hard and continued. "We have faced silence, the kind that gnaws at your bones and whispers fear into your nights. We have faced isolation, the vastness pressing in on us, reminding us of our fragility. And yet here we are, still standing." She paused, letting the words settle in the quiet room. The memories came unbidden, the final crackling broadcast from Earth that ended so abruptly, the rationing meetings strained by tensions and whispered fears, the fractures that nearly tore their community apart, and the desperate mission beyond the colony's walls that revealed the grim truths they'd been running from. "We have lost much," she said softly, "but we have also found strength in one another." Maya's unyielding optimism, Jonas's steady hand in the chaos, Liam's unwavering vigilance, they have been pillars in the storm. Our bonds, once fragile, are reforged in the fire of shared hardship. Elara's fingers tightened around the recorder. "This broadcast is not just a record of our survival, but a testament to the human spirit's stubborn refusal to yield to the void. We may be forgotten by Earth, left in silence, but we are not lost." The door to the chamber slid open quietly, and Maya Singh stepped inside, her warm smile a beacon against the somber atmosphere. "Time for the ceremony," she said gently. Elara nodded, ending the recording and rising. Together, they walked to the central hall, where the colony had gathered beneath the vaulted dome. The chamber was bathed in soft ambient light that painted every face with a gentle glow. The colonists stood in small clusters, their expressions a mixture of wariness and quiet determination. Elara stepped forward, her voice rising to fill the hall. "We gather to honor what we have lost and to affirm what we will build. The silence from Earth is no longer a void to fear, but a space for us to claim as our own. Here, in this place, we will write our future." The crowd was silent, but the energy was palpable, a collective breath held and then released. Maya moved through the assembly, her presence reassuring as she offered words of comfort and hope. Jonas stood nearby, glasses catching the light as he nodded in quiet agreement. Outside, the alien world lay vast and unchanging, a silent canvas awaiting their story. The stars above shone steady, indifferent but constant, a reminder that even in the darkest silence, there was a light to be found. As the ceremony concluded, Elara returned to her quarters. She sat once more before the recorder, the final log ready to capture the closing of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. "We are the last broadcast," she whispered into the microphone, the final signal sent into the void. "But from this silence, we will grow. We will endure. We will become more than memories lost in space. This is our home now, and we will survive." Outside, the colony's lights flickered softly, a constellation of human resilience in the vast stillness. The last broadcast was not an end, but a beginning, a quiet promise that even in silence, hope could speak volumes. The hum of the life support systems continued, steady and reassuring, as Elara's voice faded into the silence, carrying their story forward into the unknown.